Hey, good morning and welcome back. I've had a protracted absence on my YouTube channel. There was quite a few months there where I wasn't making anything, where I wasn't making any videos, where I wasn't shooting any projects, not uploading anything. And then fairly recently I put up 3 videos. The first one was about Back to the Future 2 on the Amiga. Within that video, I did say that even though I haven't been recording anything, even though I haven't been editing anything or uploading anything, I have actually still been working on projects, some of which I'm going to show you today. Now, this entire channel and the ethos behind this entire channel is about fun, and it's about being creative, and it's about making things, and it's about doing things, and it's about expressing yourself through projects. But I don't believe in limitations, and I don't believe in gating off fun. Like, I think everyone deserves the right to have fun. I think everyone deserves the right to be creative and expressive and do whatever they want to do, regardless of things like budget or even talent. I think even if people don't like what you produce, you still deserve the right to have fun producing it. Even, when I talk about budget, even things like the silly little controllers I make, that, this whole thing came in at less than £9 because I can order the bits online. And I basically run through how you can have, how you can express yourself and how you can have fun creating something for relatively low amount of money. Same here with the really ridiculous Bop It I made. Like, I made a really ridiculous controller because it made me happy and because I had fun making it. But I got it for £7 off eBay, and it was a right laugh putting it together. That also extends to this. I built a guitar purely because I wanted to build a guitar to see if I could build it, and I had fun making it, and I had fun designing it, and I had fun recording the process of building it. When something worked, when something didn't work, and then I had a lot of fun uploading the results, and people really seemed to like it. So yeah, I really enjoy making stuff, and I don't think that not being able to do something or not having the money to do something is applicable. I think you deserve the right to have fun making something, regardless of things like budget. So what I want to do today, I just want to run through some of the projects I've been making. I do have a few that I started and then stopped in the time that I wasn't recording anything, basically like this. This is a small little travel guitar that I bought years ago, and I thought, what would be fun? Instead of it going to a standard guitar jack out, what if I built an effects loop into it? Like just a mini effects loop, and just had a travel guitar which I could just plug headphones into and pack in a backpack, because it fits in a backpack, or a ukulele case, you know what I mean? I started it, didn't finish it, through not really much fault of my own, but yeah, that was basically, this was the follow-up to this. So this was all aesthetics. So this thing bleeds and shoots fire and has lights on it and everything else, a smoke machine inside. This has none of that. Like, this is purely how good can I make something sound, rather than what other little party tricks can I do. Like, how good can a budget guitar sound with very little in the way of upgrades? And I mean very little in the way of upgrades. So I'm still working on this, and I will get around to finishing it someday. But the project I want to talk about today is specifically this one right here. If you go online and you've never bought a guitar, or you're thinking about playing guitar, you're thinking about maybe buying your first guitar, you kind of want a budget, starter pack, a level entry pack. And there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of guitar budget brands now. Back in the 90s, when I bought my first one, which was this one here, your options for budget brand guitars were fairly limited. In the last, I'd say 4 or 5 years, it's gone crazy. Like, you can get a really good start a guitar for a relatively low amount of money. The word that's important there is relative. So again, going back to the whole ethos of this channel, I like to have the most amount of fun and maybe, you know, think about the most conservative budget that I can do that for. I don't want things to be like super cheap. I don't want things to say, oh, I got this for free or whatnot, because not everyone has that opportunity. There are a lot, and I mean a lot, of videos on YouTube and posts on forums about Harley Benton guitars. Now, I can already hear some of you rolling your eyes. I knew nothing about Harley Benton guitars until after I bought this. And one day, out of nowhere, my wife just turns her laptop around and goes, well, what about this? And it's this guitar here. Now, this is a baritone 7-string. She didn't know it at the time, because I was banging on about Sarah. I have always wanted a 7-string. Like, always wanted a 7-string. But again, buying a decent 7-string, especially when I bought that back in the 90s, buying a 7-string was a big amount of budget. Now, going back to the word relatively, every time you go on YouTube and look up a guitar video or a beginner's guitar video or anything with the word Harley Benton in the title, the YouTube creator or the forum post or whatever, 9 times out of 10 will say it's good, but if you spend a little bit more, you can get something way better, which in itself isn't incorrect, but that's always reviewing something for what it isn't rather than what it is. Like saying you can spend a little bit more and get more, that's the way money works. Like, you're not telling anyone anything they didn't already know. So when I bought this, I knew going in that you were never going to get I don't want to say decent, you were never going to get a guitar compared to the other guitars I've got. Like, you were never going to get a guitar compared to that. That is easily not only one of my favorite guitars, it's one of my favorite things ever. This is an Ibanez 520. You know, you have those things in your house where someone will say to you, oh, if your house was on fire, what would you run in and grab? Like me, personally, obviously, the first thing I'm going to do if my house is on fire is run in and grab my children, right? Straight after that, though, the second thing I'm going to do is use those children as a battering ram to bash open the door so I can save this. Like, I'm not a professional guitar builder. I don't know what I'm doing. Can I take a seriously low-end guitar and what can I do? What can I bring to it? Again, with a very low budget and with very low skill set. What can I do to raise it? You know, to improve it? What can I do? And I've been working on it for about 4 months now. And I'm at the stage now where I play this thing every day. Like, I love it. I love it. It's not one of these. This is still my number one. But man, is this thing fun. Like, it is a ton of fun. And, you know, it didn't take that much to get it that way. Like, I've swapped a lot of parts out of it. I've removed a lot of parts. I've added a lot of parts. But none of those parts were particularly expensive. And none of those parts were particularly hard to source. And none of those parts were particularly hard to put together. I think I'm going to split this video into two. Firstly, I'm going to focus on the guitar itself, like the additions and the changes and the things I've taken away and the things I've added and what I've sanded down and what I've, you know, changed and what I've moved and what I've, you know, resoldered and stuff like that. The first video is going to be about that. The second video is the second half of the project, and that's the pedal board. Now, I went from a guy that had loads of pedals to a guy that had one pedal and a couple of multi-effects. Like, that was it. And what I've discovered since buying this is that not only have budget guitars like gone down in price, like severely gone down in price, but pedals have too. So, video number one, which is today, I'm going to run you through what this is, what it did, what I did to it, and what it does now. All right, cool. Let's get started. So the easiest way to talk about this thing is to break this video down into chunks, essentially. The first one, I'm going to talk about what this guitar actually is. The second chunk, I'm going to talk about where it fell short, or where I wasn't quite happy with maybe some of the quality control, but straight up, like, some of the parts on it were just really below par. And then the third and final chunk is what I did to rectify those problems, whether it be mechanical or a replacement or some of the finishing issues, whatever. What I'm trying to get at is that if you're thinking about buying one of these, you're probably going to fall into a couple of different categories. One, if you're a first-time guitar player and you just like the look of it, but you've never touched a guitar before, go for it. Like, even if you never, ever go back to it, or you find that guitar is not for you, it still looks cool. Like, it'll look great on the wall. Another person who might buy this would be a professional guitar player or a gigging guitar player who just wants a backup. For you, I would say, probably not. Like, maybe not. You're going to spend, more time than you probably think it's worth repairing some of the issues, and if you're a gigging guitarist and you want something, reliable and trustworthy and is roadworthy, so I would say, maybe knock it on the head. Maybe say no. Maybe look somewhere else. The third and final person, which is me, is someone who's looking for a project guitar. So I bought this knowing at that price point, it was never, ever going to be a high standard of quality control. It was never going to have that. So I bought this thing knowing it was going to be a project. I looked at this as, well, maybe I can take something and turn it into what I want.
You're gonna be a bad mother.
And if you're like me and you're looking at a project guitar, this is perfect. But why this guitar? Why the baritone? Why the 7 strings? Why the black hardware? Why any of this? I was born in 1982, which means that in 1994, I was 12 years old. Coincidentally, also in 1994, an album came out which not only changed metal music, but changed guitar music in general to a certain extent. Why this guitar? Why the 7 strings? Well, I mean, put simply,
for me, I really like KoRn.
I love this band. I've seen them more than a dozen times. Every time they came to London, we got a ticket to go and see them, whether it be in a little dirt club or whether it be in a, the Astoria, rest in peace, or, anywhere. We would go and see that band. They're honestly one of my favorite bands. And I've always wanted a 7 string. But again, my options were fairly limited at the time. You were spending a lot of money. If you wanted their signature model, that was a lot of money, their Ibanez. So when I saw this at this price, I was like, this is now my opportunity. This is my opportunity to have a project guitar and turn it into my KoRn guitar.
Because KoRn is awesome!
I had a guy that I worked with, and he came up to me and he said, do you like KoRn? I'm like, yeah, mate, I love KoRn. And he went, oh, you should listen to this then. And he handed me a cassette tape. And the cassette tape only had a few words written on it. It was just a copied cassette. It wasn't like an original. And it just said the words "Around the Fur" on it. And that cassette I played until it snapped. Like, the Deftones, again, right up there with KoRn, one of my favorite bands of all time. If that band name rings a bell, it's probably because you recognize it from the 1996 cinematic masterpiece, The Crow, City of Angels. And it was because, literally, this guy came up to me and said, do you like KoRn? And I said, yes. So, this guitar is important to me. And I wanted to do it justice, purely because what you're looking at here is my teen years. So let's start with the first section here. What is this thing? So this particular instrument goes by the name Harley Benton Baritone-7 SBK, Sierra Bravo Kilo. Now, I'm not quite sure what the SBK stands for. Obviously the baritone because it's a baritone scale, and the 7 because it has 7 strings. But the SBK, I'm assuming the S stands for Stratocaster shape or S shape because it has got that, you know, Stratocaster shaped body, which is my favorite, particular favorite body. The BK, I can only imagine that it stands for black, because if you haven't noticed, this guitar is very, very black. Like, it is incredibly black. This guitar, in its current state, like after I've been tinkering with it, this guitar has more quality black parts than a Jordan Peele movie. This thing is just like look at this thing. I mean, this is a heavy metal guitar. You're not going to be playing MTV Unplugged on this thing. I mean, look at the absolute state of it. But I did have to change some things. So currently, if you want to buy this in its stock configuration, you're going to have to buy it from Thomann.de. They're a really good budget website based out of Germany. Now, I bought this thing, I could have sworn I bought this thing for £200, like dead. But currently on its website, it says that this is £220. Now, I can imagine that this thing has gone up in price. Maybe because apparently there are a lot of people reviewing these online, there's more interest, so maybe the price has gone up. But probably, let's be honest, where I live, we have to deal with things like this and this and this lot. So chances are, if this has to be imported from Germany, the prices have gone up for a reason. That reason being, again, this lot. So the price is $220, and that gets you a fairly decent budget guitar. I'm not going to run through all of the specs, but I am going to touch on a few of them. So let's look at some of the specifications. Now, I'm not going to go through all of it because it is a very long list of specifications, but like I said in the intro, £220 is a relatively low amount of money for an instrument. But that's still a lot of money. Like, £220 is a significant amount of money, especially in 2023. So what I'm going to do is go through this list and point out how that money is being spent on an instrument like this. So again, I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to take out some highlights. So what we have here is a 3-piece neck-through body. So from the very tippy top of the headstock all the way down to the strap peg here, this is all one piece of wood, and that wood is Canadian maple. These sections here are called the wings, and they're basically glued on either side, and they are made from poplar wood. It's not, you know, it's not the best wood in the world, but it's still pretty good. It's still pretty good wood. The reason that it's the neck through is it just helps with sustain. The fretboard is something called amaranth. Now, I am not going to pretend I know what amaranth wood is. What I do know is that it is quite, the lighting in here is terrible, but I do have some photos of it, and what I do know is that it's very, very dark along here, but has a blood red, like a crimson streak that goes across the top, and a crimson streak that goes across the bottom. Now, every piece of wood is different, so every guitar is different. Not every guitar is going to have this streak here or this like little tiny bit down here. I love it though. And I think the reason I love it the most is because it reminds me of Sega Master System cartridges. Like the way that the silver frets go this way and the silver strings go that way, gives it this like checkerboard look. And then you have a black, like really deep black here with like crimson across the top. It just looks like a Sega Master System cartridge. I love it. 24 frets. So you've got 2 full octaves. Apparently we have a graphite nut along here. I'm not going to pretend I know what graphite is, but sure, I'll take your word for it. Graphite nut. We have 2. It calls them HBZ, which I'm assuming means Harley Benton, and then Z just to be cool. High gain humbuckers. Now, these aren't those. I actually removed them, and I'll get to why in a minute in the second sort of chunk of this video. So the tuning out of the factory is standard tuning for the bottom 6 strings, and
the top string is what they call a B, and they use string gauges 10 through 59, which means it's actually slightly thicker on the top and slightly thinner on the bottom than the ones I have here. I am a huge fan of Ernie Ball Power Slinkies. So what's on here right now is a set of 11 through 58. Anything that's drop tuning, I put 11s on it. I really like them because, again,
it's KoRn!
This is in A standard. So it's the bottom 6 strings are basically in D standard. So D, G, C, F, A, D, and the top is an A. So Ernie Balls, 11 to 58, that's my string of choice. The only thing that I would say is that here you can see that I was having a little bit of a resonance issue. So what this is actually a makeup sponge. Like, I went into the pound shop and bought a load of black makeup sponges, and I didn't actually buy it for this project, but I had them left over from the Bop It controller. So on the Bop It controller, I needed something that was rigid but also soft. So like a spring, you could bend it, but when you let go, it would spring back. So this was the perfect material, and I had some left over, so I just wedged it under here. And the last thing that I want to point out in this section is locking tuners. Like, I've never had locking tuners before on any of my guitars. For what they are, they're actually all right. They're nothing special, but they work, and they work well. So yeah, A+ for that, I guess. Okay, so now we've done why this particular guitar and what are the parts that make it. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to get into the second section. Now, this is the one that I am most anxious about, because I don't want it to seem like I'm being overly critical, and I don't want it to seem like I'm being nitpicky. You got to remember that this I bought as a project guitar. I knew that there were going to be some bits coming out. I knew that there were going to be some bits being replaced. Like a Lego set, you buy the base set and then you build on from it to get the thing that you actually want, to see what you can create from that. However, there are some quality control issues, and they are unavoidable. So I would rather focus on the third and final section of what I did to rectify those and the parts that I put in, but I am going to have to cover it here. I'm going to keep it super short. The first and possibly the most unfortunate is the pickups. Now, the HBZs, or whatever they were called that they put in them, they were not good. Like I've said already, they were they didn't have like a super wide sound. They were really quiet. But again, there were some quality control issues on it. Like the thread on the screw that raises and lowers the pickup on the bridge here, the thread on that had completely worn where it was over tightened by a machine. Like, I don't think this was hand tightened, or if it was hand tightened with like a electronic screwdriver or an electric screwdriver, and it just stripped all the thread. So putting a little bit of pressure on with your finger, it just slipped the thread, and the whole pickup went plonk straight to the bottom. Like, it literally just shot into the housing here, which is unfortunate. It means that you're going to have to take all the strings off. You're going to have to, and in the end, I ended up using a small little bolt, like a small little nut that I had that luckily fit the thread of that screw. But then even then, I couldn't get the nut up all the way, or the bolt. I couldn't get the bolt up all the way. So what I had to do was completely replace the screw, which is not really acceptable. The other thing is, under this particular screw here, the person drilling the hole for this screw did it 1 or 2 mil slightly too low, but rather than fill it or do anything, it just moved it. So it's now, instead of a hole that's round, it's a hole that's oval. So we just moved it like 0.5 mil and just drilled into the same hole just so this screw would fit. So you can just turn this screw infinitely. It's not actually sunk in properly. Other little aesthetic things, the paint isn't a smooth finish all the way across. There are little bubbles. What I think that is dust in the factory. So dust has landed on the guitar, like wood dust or just like normal dust. in the factory while the paint is drying, like it's not in a dust-free environment, some of that dust has sat in the guitar and there are little hard bits on it. Not really super noticeable, doesn't really matter on a body like this because it's all matte anyway, but on the back of the neck, if you run your hand up and down it, out the factory specifically, but now I've kind of rubbed it off, like the paint is starting to wear, like it's very shiny like this behind the neck. Yeah, you could from day one feel little bits of dust and dirt that have sat in the paint, and you could feel it all the way down. Like I say, I've been using it so much that now it's nice and smooth, but just again be aware that that's a thing. You know what, I am going to get super nitpicky. This switch here, like I said, this guitar is black. Everything about it is black. But for some reason, again, they went to the effort of painting the screws, not well, but at least they went to the effort of painting the screws black, using black ferrules, using black foam, using black knobs, everything. But they put on a chrome pickup selector with a black cap. Like, I replaced this. Like, I'll get to that in the third section, but why on earth would you use a chrome pickup selector on a guitar where you've gone to the effort of making everything black? Like, why would you do that? I cannot figure it out. So because I have, like, strange OCD, I was going to replace the pickup selector anyway because it also felt a bit mushy, whereas this one's got a very definite clunk. So yeah, I was going to replace it anyway, but yeah, why? Why would you use chrome? I mean, this is how bad my OCD is. I actually also replaced this, even though, because this outside here, this was like I don't know, like a stainless steel as well. But I replaced that with a black one because I have issues. So yeah, there were some definite quality control issues. Another one, which again, not really acceptable. Like, I wouldn't say it's like, a lot of guitars have this, but it could have been so easily avoided. This guitar had the worst case of hum or buzz that I have ever experienced in a guitar. And that includes the one I built when I didn't know what I was doing. It includes that. So, and this is, you know, a professionally built guitar. So, I went through the guitar from literally from top to bottom to figure out where this buzz was coming from. So the first thing I did was pull out these pickups, because I was going to replace them anyway. So I pulled out the pickups and then put in new pickups, thinking, well, maybe it's just the pickups are noisy. No. And I'll go through these Warmans in a minute, but no, it wasn't that. There was still a buzz. I took off the bridge and looked at the ground wire inside. The ground wire wasn't actually touching the bridge at all. There was a ground wire there. It just wasn't connected. Like, it just went to about here inside and stopped. So I pulled out the ground wire and got a brand new, like completely brand new wire, wrapped it around the bridge. Again, used some copper tape, grounded the post on this side, soldered in the ground wire, so it's all soldered up, put in the post, put in the thing, still buzzing. So I went through all the electronics, I went through all the grounding on the potentiometers, I went through the grounding on here, all checked out, all was fine. In the end, I'm assuming it was maybe something with the input jack. Like, I have to assume that, because I went through everything. It was, did that, still buzzing. Did this, still buzzing. Grounded the bridge, still buzzing. Checked all the wiring here, still buzzing. So it has to be the output jack. But it doesn't matter because, like I'm going to get to in the third section, I tore all of it out anyway. One of the biggest things that I was worried about would be the neck, specifically, because I hate dealing with truss rods and whatnot. I can do it and I can set up intonation, but I don't really enjoy doing it because it's a pain and I've got a million other things to do. But I had to do that as well. So the intonation from the factory, well out. That's before I even changed the strings. It's still in B standard tuning from the factory with the strings that came on it from the factory, and the intonation is really well out. So I adjusted the truss rod to get some of the camber in the neck right as well. There was a lot of fret buzzing on some of the strings. And also I intonated the bridge. So again, you're gonna have to do that. It doesn't come from the factory. So again, with the buzz, with the paint, everything else, you have to then do the intonation, and it's just a pain. But again, none of these things, even the screw here, none of them are unfixable. Like, it's all fixable. The bones of this thing, there is a foundation here that you can build on. It's just, you have to jump through, you have to get over a lot of hurdles. But the foundations here are pretty solid. How do you take this foundation? How do you take the skeletal structure that is this guitar from the factory and turn it into something that is so cool that every spare moment you get, you just want to pull it off the wall and play it like it's your new favorite toy? Again, I'm not a luthier. I'm not a skilled electrical engineer. I'm learning this stuff as I go along. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. Like, just my biggest piece of advice, take your time. Like, a project like this doesn't need to be done overnight. You can do it. There are people out there who can help you. Just take your time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the tippy top and work my way down and just point out, what I did, what I changed, what I replaced, and I'll try and keep it brief. And where possible, I'll throw up a screenshot of where I got it, and hopefully, if it's still available, best price, where you can find it. But even if you can't find exactly the one that I put in it, like, anything will do. Like, none of these parts are like super duper expensive. Okay, so like I already mentioned, I didn't change the tuners at all. They're still the same locking tuners that come stock. I did add the little bit of foam. Where I started, though, was along the fretboard. So the fretboard itself was kind of rough, almost like it was unfinished. It still had a lot of wood grain in it, like a lot of wood grain, which I wasn't a fan of. So what I did was I took all the frets and I taped them up, and then just like very, 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 very fine wet and dry, just to get some of that grain off the wood. After that, what I did was I oiled it with a little bit of lemon scented oil, which I use on all my guitars, but just sanding the fretboard, just in between the frets, very, very gently. We're not doing like scalloped frets. We're not doing any of that. We're just taking some of that wood grain out. It really did make a difference, especially with like bends and stuff like that. Really, really, really did like that. I don't know why it felt so unfinished at the factory. Again, I'm guessing it's just quality control, but yeah, just a little bit of wet and dry. Took, I don't know, best part of an hour, and it's just night and day. Then when you rub the oil on it, that red really pops out, and the blacks get really, like, really deep black, and then the really, thick crimson red comes through. Lovely. So yeah, just that little thing made all the difference. Getting into the main body. So as you can tell, very first thing I did was change the pickups. Again, originally, I thought it was because the stock pickups were super noisy. I would have changed them out anyway, because again, I didn't like that super sort of thin sounding, very quiet sounding pickup. I wanted something that was going to be a lot louder, and B, sort of more dynamic. But I didn't want to spend a lot of money. 7-string pickups can range wildly in price. You can either spend a lot or very little. These I found while searching just randomly, they popped up, and the reason that I bought them, believe it or not, for these pickups, the price is good. However, the price wasn't the reason I bought them. The reason I bought them was the name that they were given to them. These are the Warman Deadly Sinners. And I sat there and I thought, Deadly Sinners, what was that, 3 inches of blood song? I was like, that's a bit of a deep pull, but no, it's because they've got 7 poles, 7 deadly sins, deadly sinners. Now, being a dad, I recognise a good dad pun anywhere, so I thought, all right, you got points for that. You got points for that, Warman. I like the name. And then I went to, I was like, well, where do I buy these things? because I saw them pop up in a list, and I was like, okay, I like that name. Let me just have a listen. And I listened, and I thought they were kind of cool. And then I went to their website, and boy, right, for a start, I don't think they sell on... I think they might sell them on Amazon, I'm not sure. But I bought them directly off their website, purely because, again, the title drew me in, the price was nice, but the pictures on their website are amazing. Like, this is genuinely how they sell these pickups. Like, this is from their website. And I'm always suspicious of things that are cheap and have really slick marketing. Like, really slick marketing. And a low price point, I'm always suspicious. This, on the other hand, had this website with these pictures and then a Facebook link, and that was it. So I'm like, look, the company that makes these, and this is like a small British company, they're probably not made in the UK. These are probably wound like abroad and then shipped over. But I was like, this is amazing. Like, the write-up, the blurb for these is incredible. Not only because it's got like grammatical and spelling errors in it, but it's just really cool to read. Combined with the name, combined with the price, and combined with those pictures, I'm like, I have to hear these things. So I thought, for that price, why not? Take a punt. And before I tell you what they sound like clearly they sound better because they're still in there. But let me just read you what's written on their website. I'll pick out little bits. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I just want to pick out some little bits that made me laugh. Warman Deadly Sinners, pair of matched hot, overwound 7-string humbucker pickups, supplied with mounting springs and screws. 2-wire output. So the 2-wire output refers, sometimes you have a 4-wire, sometimes you have a 2-wire. All that means is that you can't split the coils. Like with this, I didn't want to split the coils, I just wanted to keep it nice and simple. The pickups give a huge range of tones with loads of heavy, punchy lows, warm mids, and power. Pinched harmonics are easy to produce time and again due to excellent range of frequency responses. I can 100% attest to this. These things, well, specifically this one, love pinched harmonics. Like, I have just been throwing them in everywhere. These things live to do pinched harmonics. Absolutely love them. Then it goes bridge sinner, which is this one here. 61mm overall string span over the centers of the 7 poles, wound to, and this is what I learned, 15.53 k ohm, which when interacting with the magnet produces a face melting 8.98 Henry of inductance. A truly mighty pickup with awesome metal abilities. I didn't know this until I went on this site, that the true measure of a pickup and like the true measure of a pickup's worth is in something called inductance, which is measured, believe it or not, in a unit called Henrys. I didn't know this. So because I was like, this website is just winding me up now. Like 8.98 Henrys. What does that even mean? I genuinely didn't know. I'd never heard the term before. I didn't even know it was a unit of measurement. But yeah, 9.98 Henrys on this one. I'm going to skip to the end. Overall string span across the poles wound to a more mellow when compared to its more badly behaved bridge brother. 7.97 K, which produces 4.72 Henrys. For warm and powerful chords with a broad tonal spectrum for when the ferocity backs off a little. Also sounds fantastic if you're one of those metal players that likes thicker tones soloing on the neck. I think they mean the neck pickup rather than just soloing on the neck, because what else are you soloing on here? But then the bottom bit is what made me literally stop reading and go to the order page and buy it. Like, the photos was great, the price was great, but listen to this last bit. The stones on these guys. To give you some idea of the power of the pickups, a Damasio dual sound pickup with the coils in series, i.e. at its most powerful setting, has an inductance of 6.4 Henrys, and an EMG Select SEHG has an inductance of 4.2 Henrys. So this has got more Henrys. And I don't really know what Henrys are. I barely know what inductance is after I Wikipedia'd it, but more is better, right? I have no idea. But it's saying that this has more Henrys than a Damasio and more Henrys than an EMG. Like, cool, I guess. I was like, the stones on these guys to literally name check the competition, like Warman Guitars from the UK, to name check like Damasio and EMG and say, yeah, we got more than those in a unit that I've never heard of. But yeah, I was like, fine. Combined with the pictures, combined with the price, I'm like, I'll give it a go. And man, are these things better. Like, these things, when they say hot, they are not joking. Like, those Henrys, yeah, it definitely does add up. More Henrys is apparently very, very good, because this one is insane. This one, I'm not sold on it. I don't think it's as warm, and it's definitely nowhere near the acoustics of the Ibanez 6-string pickup that I use all the time for like really cool, clean and ambient stuff. But it's all right. It's serviceable. But this thing, man, this thing is mental. Moving on to the electronics down the bottom. Now, remembering this is a project guitar, I knew that there was going to be some changes that I wanted to make. It turns out that I made a lot more changes than I would like to have made, but I knew that changes were going to be made anyway. So let me break it down for you. Out the factory, you have a 3-way pickup selector. So you have bridge position, both, and then neck position here. And then you have a volume knob and a tone knob. Now, since the age of 17, whenever I got my first guitar, I have never, ever, ever used a tone knob. Like, I always just max that thing out. Purely because if I'm going to get, you know, a different tone out of something, I'm not going to do it from the pickup. I'm going to do it from an EQ pedal or from an EQ on a, like the amp or something like that. I'm never really going to roll off the tone to try and get a different noise. I'm not that kind of guitar player. It's always on max. So completely ripped out all the electronics, got the pots out because I thought that's where the hum was coming from, got rid of them, bought a new toggle switch because, again, black. So I put the new toggle switch on and I wired it up the way I wanted. There is not a single piece of electronics in this guitar that came from the factory. None of it. So the way it works is now that this is a volume control for the bridge pickup, and this is actually a volume control for the neck pickup, and then this selects between them. And I put on the pots in such a way that now, instead of a tone control, what I can do is I can change the volume on one, roll it back and get a different sound out of one, get a different sound out of this one by rolling this back. And if I put it in the middle, I can get like this weird, it's almost like a tone control where I'm just turning down and have a little bit more of this and a little bit less of this, or the other way around, and I can sort of mix the sound by mixing the two pickups together. Or, and this is what I normally do, max out one and then completely mute the other one, and then I can go kill switch. So I can get all my Tom Morello stuff. Like, just by doing sort of the mid position and then down, I can just completely Tom Morello it. So just scratch up the things and do all of that. Lovely. Last thing that I did was around the back, the cavity. I completely took that apart and used slug tape. The reason it's called slug tape is because slugs have coprophobia. So slugs are actually afraid of copper because it reminds them when they used to be a delicacy for the robot overlords. And what you do is you, as long as it's got an adhesive, conductive adhesive on it, you can basically just line the inside of the cavity or the pickup cavities with copper tape and completely ground it. So the inside was really rough. It looked like the wood hadn't been cut. It looked like the wood had been torn out originally from the factory. So I ripped out all the electronics, took out the knobs, took out the potentiometers, threw all of them away, and got some pretty cheap potentiometers, got some slug tape, and just completely sanded down, smoothed down the inside cavity. Covered it, insulated it, grounded it, attached the ground wire here, attached the ground wire to here, attached the ground wire to here, attached the ground wire on there. Everything's grounded. And then, once all of that had been rewired, it was just silent. This thing is silent. You can put it on maximum volume. You can put it through as many gain pedals as you want. This thing does not hum. This is 100% quiet. That's pretty much it. I mean, it's not a lot of changes, but it makes such a difference. Like the way that the frets feel now that they've been sanded, the way that the pickups react to just small little touches. You get these like really cool metallic squealies. It's great. The way that you don't have that sort of resonance hum just through a little bit of makeup sponge. Like, it doesn't have to be expensive. None of this stuff is expensive. The most expensive thing I bought was these pickups, and even they were like 32 quid, 33 quid. Like, that's the most expensive thing. The rest of it was from eBay. I got some potentiometers from eBay. The toggle switch was from eBay, I think. The little input jacks from eBay. The slug tape, again, Amazon, I think. Like, none of this is super expensive. I'm not using professional grade gear here. I'm literally just using what I have. But yeah, those are the improvements. Now, what I'm going to do next is, I think I'll do this in the next video, is plug this thing in and run you through the pedal board that this thing runs through now. Like, it sounds good, like just in clean, just into an amp, just with a little bit of amp distortion. But this pedal board I've put together, combined, this is like, it's double trouble. You have the pedal board and this, they go together like strawberries and cream. It's just perfect, and you can get that amazing KoRn sound. So that's the guitar. Click the link in the corner if you're watching this after the second part's come up to check out the pedal board and see what I've managed to do with that. Also, I thought it'd be a funny joke, throw in that little thing about cuprophobia, but it wasn't until I actually found the name that I found out there's a fear of butt cheeks. Apparently that's a thing, huh? Also, others like me? What the hell?